Welcome to the first part of our two-part webinar series, How Android Enterprise Protects Your Workspace with Citrix Endpoint Management. The first session will focus on best practices for application deployment, including the first steps you need to take when first setting up Android Enterprise with Citrix Endpoint Management. We have three presenters today: Jeroen Lebon, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Citrix, Chetan Thacker, Principal Product Manager for Android at Citrix, and also Mirko Belez, Partner Enable Manager from Google. We also have Jonathan Campos, who will be joining us today and as a panelist and helping with the questions. We'll be covering topics such as the newest features for Android Enterprise, the latest enrollment modes, and migrating from Device Administrator to Android Enterprise policies. You can submit your questions at any time using the questions panes of the control panel on your right, and we'll be answering the questions as we go along, as well as a Q&A at the end. However, before we start with the main part of the webinar, I am going to launch a couple of poll questions because this will help direct our presentation today. So the first question today, has that launched? Launched, there we go. Which of the following answers applies best to your migration to Android Enterprise? If you could give us an indication of where you are on your migration process, that would be great. I'll leave that open for a minute or so, and then we will move on to the next poll question. Okay, any more answers? I'm just about to close that poll. Okay, let me share the responses. So these are the responses. We have some of you have completed migration, some of you have not started, and then we have 25% or so in between. So let me show the next one. If I can get back to the poll. Oh. So the next question we have today is, have you moved one or more of your enterprise in-house applications to the managed Google Play Store? And again, I will leave this open for a minute or so, and then I will share the responses. Okay, I think we've collected them all, so I will now shut the poll and share the responses. So there you have the responses. So now I will hand it over to our first speaker today, which is Jeroen. Over to you.
Thank you, Amy, for the brief introduction and doing the poll, of course, and welcome everybody to this exciting episode of the Untamed World of Citrix Endpoint Management. Happy to be here. Happy to have all my colleagues here and my friend Mirko Belez from Google. What we're going to do today, we're going to talk about the best practices of application deployments, the first steps of setting up Android Enterprise, deploying various types of applications with the managed Google Play, a little bit about work profile compatibility that in relationship to the segmentation of the security boundaries within Android Enterprise. The managed configurations is there a big part of it for the application side of things. Then our good friend and product manager Chetan will take it over and we'll talk a little bit about our new Citrix MEM SDK approach, and of course about our new mobile workspace experience for Android Enterprise. Really excited about this new feature that we are releasing. Mirko, thank you for making time and joining us on this session. I want to hand this over, this first part to you, and talk a little bit about the challenges that Android Enterprise will bring to your organization and how to solve it.
Thanks for having me here, Jeroen, and especially also to the rest of the Citrix team. It's my first time to co-present actually with you guys from Citrix. Very excited. So thanks again for the opportunity. But we have a lot to cover because we have around 55 minutes left, and I know you want to do some demos as well. So I want to give you some insights in what about the challenges, but it's not only about the challenges, right? Because it's also about the benefits that one may face when moving to Android Enterprise. And what we just saw from the poll is that there is a lot of work to do because, as you know, Google has started to deprecate certain features already, as with Android 10. So that means you're not too late, but people really should start moving. And I think that's what we just saw from the poll, that there is quite some work to do. And with Citrix, you have the good tools in hand to make the move at the right time in the right place. So please make sure you do this with a little bit of power so everybody can start its migration. And what I've been doing actually is we've categorized this into 3 pillars. One pillar being security, the other one being deployment and management, and the third one is customization and budget. And for security, you all know you need a multi-layered strategy to protect from malware, intrusion, and espionage. And Android offers already a lot of security features out of the box, which are baked into the hardware and the platform already. And I will discuss this later in greater detail. And we can move to the next slide, Jeroen. So for deployment and management, you need to have a strategy that's of the utmost importance. You need to support the growing number of users and devices and how to provision those and what if they need support. And this is considered one of the most important challenges, especially for complex or large enterprise environments. And the Android Enterprise platform offers a solution to all of these to build the right strategy. And for the more complex or large deployments, you can use available tools like, of course, Citrix Endpoint Management software to help speed up the deployment and ease of management. Next slide, please. So, but what about customization and budget? That's equally important, right? So Android Enterprise allows for different use cases and varied budget, from small to large enterprises, for enabling BYOD users to shift or task workers, for example, police force, firefighters, or medical personnel, using special equipment like so-called rugged devices. An Android Enterprise is the flexible solution to achieve the desired result and strategy within planned time and budget. And Jeroen is going to explain this by diving just a little bit deeper on the Android Enterprise management options and use cases available in the next few slides to come.
Thank you, Mirko. And as you already mentioned, Citrix Endpoint Management provides the tools to make that transition even smoother to the new Android Enterprise management models. And to get you some insights on this, of course, you need to know which models do we support, and especially now with Android 11 being available, you need to know which management modes are supported. So on the personal profile side, we support the bring your own device scenario with the Android Enterprise Work Profile. On the corporate profiles side of things, where a factory reset is required, we support the company-owned business-only model, or the fully managed device, or the corporate-owned single use case, the dedicated device. Pre-Android 11, so the copy model, corporate-owned, personally enabled, we support fully managed device with a work profile. And with the new technologies that we are onboarding and making available to our customers, and Chetan will talk about that a little bit later on the Workspace experience and how we're going to use the Android cloud management APIs. We will support the work profile on fully managed device. For more detailed questions on that, or information on that, Mirko is going to tell you more about the differences between these two scenarios.
Yeah, and as you already mentioned, you already gave away a snippet of the Android 11, right? So we have bring this new version, and as you know, Android 12 is already looking somehow in the horizon. But first, let's focus on Android 11, because from an Android 11, there have been some changes, like in pre-Android 11, so talking about Android 10 and earlier, management has been configured largely based on the ownership. Who is owner of the device? And now that raised potential confusion around privacy with personal usage on company-owned devices. So on Android 11, we try to establish consistency using the work profile for customers needing to ensure employee privacy when personal usage is involved, regardless of the ownership of the model. And you can actually clearly see this on the picture if you take a look at the bottom. So personally owned, you had the work profile, right? But then company owned, you could also have a work profile. But apparently, if you take a look at the pre-Android 11, that is different, which makes it hard to understand because it's both a work profile, but there are differences to this work profile being used. On the other side, if you take a look at the right slide, Android 11, if you have a personally owned device that's inflated with a work profile, and if you have a company-owned device, a copy model that's also inflated with a work profile, there is no difference anymore. And again, the reason why we did this is very specific because we were concerned, and we still are concerned about privacy for the end user and security. And that's why we said, there should be no differences. If you're using a work profile as an end user, you don't need to think, am I on Android 10? Am I on Android 11? It should always be the same. It should have consistency. And this is exactly why we made the change. And to give you a little bit more background on the so-called imperfections and why we did this, it's, for example, pre-Android 11 in the, and therefore you need to move to the next slide, Jeroen, because pre-Android 11, what we clearly saw is that we had some, Jeroen, can you move to the next slide?
Don't you see the next slide?
No, I was actually looking, but okay, that's the one I was looking for. So somehow it did not move forward. So again, pre-Android 11, we have some, we would say, imperfections for personally enabled company-owned devices, where you would have some lack in critical asset management capabilities on the work profile side. We offered some UX changes, but it did not really reflect the privacy protections that we wanted to give you. And also it was lacking some privacy in the dedicated space for the personal usage. And because of that reason, that is actually why we focused around more privacy and security starting on Android 11. And you will see, as we will go to newer versions, that we will even extend this way more, just to make sure that when it comes to privacy and security, you can always be assured that we do our very best to protect your data and your personal stuff. With that, let's take a look at, if you want to migrate to a newer version, what do you need in terms of identity? So what are the options that you literally have available? Well, you could either use a managed Google Play account, or you could use a managed Google account. Hey, that is both managed and Google. So what really is the difference between the managed Google Play account or the managed Google account? So the managed Google account, if you hear this terminology, the managed Google account is actually a customer that has purchased Google services like G Suite, for example, for Chrome OS, and need to have an account with Google, which they usually paid for. So those accounts are fully manageable by your company and have some overhead for managing. So remember, managed Google account is account that is being paid for. And then you have the managed Google Play, which is the account that everybody else should be using, that EMMs can set up automatically, free of charge, no payment, easier to manage, doesn't require any overhead. And that should be the default, I'm pretty sure, for most of the Android enterprise deployments. Next slide, please. So with that, when using EMM managed identities, one slide back, Jeroen. When using EMM managed identities, there is a one-to-many connection for bindings. So enrollment is easy, and there is no cost for the managed accounts. There is no need to verify domains like with the managed Google accounts. And the managed Google accounts, remember, the paid ones, they have a limitation. For example, is that your company.com domain can only be tied to one EMM at a time. So, and since you know that, if you would like to have test and production environments, how would you handle that in that case? That's going to be a challenge, right? So, and yeah, of course, you can create extra subdomains, which makes things more complex. So even more overhead, as mentioned earlier. And I'm pretty sure this is something that you're not wanted to have. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the setup when using managed Google Play accounts via an EMM, which are for free, which has some benefits as well. Because first, From within the EMM suite, we need to bind the enterprise ID to create a so-called managed service account. And once this has been done, an enterprise service account is created for the organization actions, for creation, for deleting of users, allow of apps on behalf of the EMM, etc. And after that user account can be created randomly, there is no username associated because of privacy again. So we as Google do not know which managed Google Play accounts are mapped to the EMM accounts, which brings me to point 4. The EMM maps the user accounts to the created devices accounts. So only the EMM does have that visibility. And here on this slide, you can see actually an example of how this would look like. So managed Google Play accounts do not collect user information. They're not visible to users. The EMM does the mapping, EMM versus user, so EMM user ID versus managed Google Play user ID. Google does not have this information, only the EMM does. When using EMM managed identities, there is a so-called one-to-many connection for bindings. Enrollment is easy, and there is no cost for the managed accounts. So there is no need to verify domains like with managed Google accounts. And again, a managed Google account, which is being paid for, that has a limitation. For example, that again, your company can only be tied to one domain. So again, you would run into problems with that and production and so on. So that's something that you're actually not looking for. So if we move on to the next slide, then we can actually see a customer that is going to use this stuff. What should be the customer considerations and what steps are required to use the managed Google accounts? Well, who is the owner of the domain? Needs the domain to be verified. And how do we actually create the user? Do we actually need stuff like single sign-on? And how does that work? And can we create the users automatically, or is this done by another system? And is that system designed to do that? Is it secure and can it be managed? And what about conflicting accounts? Because if you ever, or if your company already is using Google accounts, where they're using already their company domain, and now all of a sudden you want to attach those to the EMM production system, that can be really quite challenging. So for that, there are some additional configurations like we can see on the next slide. So before choosing the managed Google accounts, before choosing the managed Google accounts, you should consider some stuff. So you need to find the admin actually who first set up the domain, because he needs to do some stuff for you to be able to actually use that domain. You need to create that one-to-one EMM domain binding. And remember, you can only have a binding with one EMM. So if you're trying to look into other solutions, that might be challenging for you. If you want to use the API and integration, that needs additional knowledge and can take up time. So you need to have people who really understand what you're doing. And it might be the case that accounts from Google Console must be manually pasted into the EMM console, which is not really a good experience. And Jeroen will show you actually from the next slide how from within the Citrix system you can actually set up your accounts to enroll within the Citrix system.
Yeah, thanks, Mirko. A quick note on the account options that you have, and we get a lot of questions on different device modes being used and some limitations. So in case when the device owner mode is a company-owned device and you use a managed Google Play user account, there is a limit of 10 devices per user account. And in addition to that, if you use the device owner mode as a dedicated device, as we showed in the previous slide, combined with a managed Google Play device account, there is no limit. So if you have use cases where you have tablets in bulk, like a kiosk or other dedicated devices, be aware that in the enrollment profiles and in the enrollment configuration, you can make this separation so that you don't run into these limitations. So next, I'm gonna switch a little bit to my my console, and we're gonna have a look at how you configure the binding between Citrix Endpoint Management and the Android Enterprise configuration. So when you go into the console, you have a nice sprocket on the top right, which is brings you to your settings, and under your platform settings configuration, you see Android Enterprise. So in this scenario, it's already configured. So you see your enterprise ID, which is important. Take notice of this because we're going to show something in relation to application distribution later on, where this enterprise ID is important. And you see your name, and you see that the Android Enterprise is enabled, and you have the option to unenroll. And as Mirko said, there can only be one relationship between Citrix Endpoint Management and the account that you use. So let's switch quickly to another instance that I have running here, where Android Enterprise is not configured. So we'll go to the sprocket again in the top right, go to the platform and to the Android Enterprise, and you will see the initial first-time administrative web page on how you can configure Android Enterprise. And you see here a notification that if you are a G Suite customer, it's recommended to use the legacy Android Enterprise settings. So if you click on the legacy Enterprise settings, you see the option for the binding with your G Suite account, as Mirko mentioned, when you are going to use your G Suite in combination with Android Enterprise. If not, then you just click Connect. Connect will give you a pop-up, and in that pop-up, that will bring you to, and I hopefully, I don't know if you're able to see it because it's on a different screen. So let me swipe it over. Mirko, do you see the Bring Android to Work screen at the moment now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. And you see you already have signed up with Enterprise, and that's because I already signed up here. So I will do another account. Let's see if this works. Otherwise, we quickly skip. I have here a demo account. At gmail.com, and you see here there is no binding here or relation with your existing domain. So this account is completely separate. If you use your corporate email here, you will get an error that that you're not able to use this this account for Android Enterprise binding. Password. It takes a little bit longer than expected. So let's skip that. The steps are really simple. Get started. You give us a name. Now you select your enterprise mobility provider, in this case Citrix. You select next. You fill in your data protection officer and your EU representative. Let's make it a little bit smaller here. You accept and confirm, and at that moment you get a complete registration, and you see that in Citrix Endpoint Management the binding is successful. So the window will, you will see to get enterprise ID in Citrix Endpoint Management. So let's switch back quickly through the presentation, and I will hand it back over to Mirko. Go. Mirko, I think still on mute.
Yeah, thanks. I'm back again now. So thanks, Jeroen, because what you showed as a demo is actually really easy, right? So you solved that challenge, which is not really a challenge because you see how easy it can be to enroll into Android Enterprise. And that's already part one of the challenge that you need to do. But hey, right, again, it's not really a challenge. But the thing is, now you are able to connect all your devices to Android Enterprise, which is great. But the next step is actually you want to make use of the applications that are available either in-house or in the managed Google Play Store. So what you want to do next is to make sure that you can deploy applications. And that is something that you can do with Managed Google Play. So, and with Managed Google Play, you have the ability actually to get applications from the App Store. And you can whitelist applications that you allow your end users to be able to use. And again, most EMMs and Citrix as well have integrated the Managed Google Play Store into the EMM console, which makes it really easy to check which applications you can distribute to your end users. And the way that has been done is by using a store layout. And this store layout actually does customize the ability.
Yeah, I think so. There's some kind of a connectivity issue on the end of Mirko. So let us just ping him and see if he can come back pretty soon.
Should we switch to
Yes,
some? I was going to suggest we switch to some Citrix slides whilst we wait for him to come back.
Yeah. So we can take it over from here and wait for him to come back, and we can do some nice little demos that we have planned for later on in regards to the manage app and the configuration. So as Mick already said, deploying and managing apps is all about automation, how it's pushed, how the user experience is achieved or received, and make it as seamless as possible. So we integrated with the managed Play iframe APIs that Google provides there, so that the administrator doesn't have to get into a separate web page to configure deployment of applications or manage applications, or even spend another $25 on the developer console if you want to make use of test tracks or beta tracks, or even other stage deployment methods you want to use for internal deployments of applications or enterprise applications. So the managed Google Play iframe has several functions. As I said, the managed configuration, the private app publishing I mentioned before, also in my demo before, where I said remind yourself of that enterprise ID later on, that can be used to deploy private apps or publish private apps also into other organizations that use Android Enterprise. So if you have an ISV that was an application, makes it publicly available to several customers, you can use that enterprise ID. So web apps are a big part of it, or the web links as we knew it in the past. Private app publishing, so it's simple and fast. As I mentioned before, now we have this iframe. You don't have to spend $25 on fee for a developer account. Everything goes through the API, is seamless for the administrator. Be aware that if you publish a private app, that the application identifier, what you see here as com.test.my.private.app, can only exist once in the managed Play Store. So when you're staging applications, having different development tracks, be aware that that can only use an application name once. And Mirko is again.
I'm back again. I hope you can hear me again.
Yep, I can hear you again. So we hand over here. I told the attendees a little bit about the iframe, the changes, the integrations we have with the iframe, and I was at the point of telling more about the private publishing. So
okay. Yeah, thanks for taking over. And all of a sudden, my machine stopped. I quickly need to find something else, so I hope it's not going to happen again. So taking it over there from there again. So let's take a look at the private app publishing, right? Because a private app is an app that's only available to an enterprise user. So the old way, you need to use Google Play Console. It was a complex process. It needed to fill in many details regarding content rating and so on. You had a comprehensive policy check. You had to create a developer account, pay $25, and provide many details. But now you can do it actually much quicker. It only takes 10 minutes. And there have been made some changes to the API, which makes it actually more easier, because we've been moving this into the iframe as well. With that, we can move to the next slide, Jeroen. So you also have the ability actually to use web apps, and web apps is actually pretty easy, because that's just a web page that turns into an Android application, making it easier to find and simpler to use on mobile. And a web app looks actually like a native app in a device launcher, and that opens a brand new range of use cases, and it's a very excited future that can be used, and it's actually pretty easy. Next slide, Jeroen. So with that, you now know actually that you have two ways to deploy applications. And one way, we need to go back one slide to deploy apps Zoom. One way is actually to select from Play and deploy from EMM. And the other way is actually the EMM that supports iframe integration allow for direct access to manage Google Play from console. And that's actually both very easy, very intuitive, because your IT admin just selects the application into the Play Store, which should be made available to the enterprise devices, and your EMM can make sure that those will be distributed onto the mobile devices without your end users literally needed to do anything. And with that, I think Jeroen has a demo available again to show how some of this stuff works.
Yeah, and let me switch again to my browser, and that would be available. So just a quick note, as you mentioned, like the app is available for mobile devices. In modern times, that means like not only smartphones but also your tablet. But in issue also are Chromebooks, right? So you can deploy applications, even Android applications, to a Chromebook. But that's a different topic at all. We can maybe discuss in a different webinar. But for now, configuring and deploying applications through the iframe. So we're now in the test instance again on my Citrix Endpoint Management, and I need to take in consideration of a little delay before I start clicking around on all the websites. So when you go to configure, there are several tabs. You have the device policies, the apps, the media, the actions, the content, collaboration, the enrollment profiles, and the delivery groups. All of them except delivery groups are places where you can configure security of applications or configuration related settings, and then you all group them into the delivery group and deploy them to devices and users. So we go to the applications tab to show you the manage iframe, and as you already, or if you already been using a Citrix Endpoint Management, you will go to the Add tab as you being used, and you get a nice pop-up with all these separate applications that Citrix Endpoint Management can deploy. So we have the X applications the web SaaS, the web links, the private applications, and public store apps. And as Mirko always said, already there is a binding now between the managed Google Play Store and Citrix Endpoint Management. So initially, I give the application a name, I clear the platform, and I only select the Android Enterprise section. And let's say I want to install Zoom. I will search for Zoom, and you will get a nice pop-up, which is the managed iframe through the API integration of Citrix Endpoint Management, where you have the option to approve the apps or the app. And when you approve the app, there's some additional options available there. So let me zoom. Oh, what is the issue here? Let me search again. Looks like a little timeout.
Yeah, Jeroen, we've been also noticing some kind of connectivity issues on your end, at least for me. So it could be that.
So you having connection issues yourself, or is it?
No, when we hear you, it's kind of some. So just want to let you know.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why this is not working. Looks like connectivity issues on my end also. So let me see if I have already configured applications, the application that will give you the same insight. Android Enterprise apps, like here. You see the check for updates option. So this also gets you back to the store, the managed Google Play Store, and you can approve the updates here. You have the approve button. So that's the integration. I think, due to interest of time, we will skip further the further demo and go back to the slides. Mirko, back to you.
Yeah, thanks. With that, let's take a look at using in-house apps and what you need to do actually to make sure that you can use in-house applications in Android Enterprise. So you need to actually follow an app submission process, which we'll see on the next slide, that has 4 dots, which actually means you need to log into the Google Play console with the same account you actually completed the binding with the EMM with. And you need to pay a one-time fee that costs $25. And there's a reason for that if you do it this way. There are other ways where you don't need to pay anything if you upload them, for example, using the iframe. But you also need to determine if you want to do a Google-hosted application or if you want to host the application yourselves. And there are some benefits and some challenges if you want to host them yourself, but there might be a valid reason actually to do so. You need to select a checkbox that denotes the app is for private distribution, and then you can invite other developers into your console and apply roles based on access controls. Let's take a look at the next slide on some of the advantages of hosting private apps on Google Play. So again, private apps, but on Google Play, not self-hosted. So the advantages when you send those to Google Play is reliability and scalability, thanks to global availability of a CDN, a content delivery network, independent of where you are on the world. We distribute these apps to so many servers that if you're in Germany and Belgium and France, on the other side of the ocean, the copy would be available there, so it can be quickly downloaded onto your device. It's easy and can be centralized, managed if you choose this option. and you have all the security benefits of Play Protect platform and the Play Store that applications can be scanned. And I think that's a very important one, which we'll also see on the next slide, because if you upload your application into the Google Play Store, then we can actually see that private apps go through the same security protocols as published apps. And I don't see the next slide yet, Jeroen, so I'm not sure if that's because of yeah, there it is. So the private apps go through the same security protocols as the public apps. And that's actually, I think, a very huge benefit, because what we will actually do is we use the knowledge and the power that we have within our systems to check for vulnerabilities in the application. We know a lot of frameworks which do not work very well, which are insecure, and we use this technology to actually scan your application to make sure that if you have any of these things inside your application, that we will be able to reject it, because we want to be number one when it comes to security, right? We want to prohibit you for some of the mistakes that you might not have seen, but which we have considered. So common issues that might occur actually is improper encryption algorithms, improper keys, malware injected during the development, which you might not have noticed, and more of that kind of stuff. So that is why we actually do scan it. Let's go to the next slide to actually see what the best practices are for uploading private apps to manage Google Play. Well, you have to use a unique package name with your domain. You should use updates that must be signed by the original certificate, because otherwise it looks like it's coming from another source and we will actually reject it. You're not allowed to use images with other companies' logos, because again, that could be fraudulent or that could be really tricky, and that is something that we're not going to accept. And you can use the Google Play app signing mechanism to manage the signing certificates. And that's a benefit, because if you have developers leaving the company for whatsoever reason, and they did actually not take good care of the key, then you have a problem. And that's why you actually should consider the signing mechanism, storing the certificates with Google Play to make sure that you can easily reuse it. Now, this was about applications that you could host using Managed Google Play. So where you actually upload them to Google. But what about if you have concerns to this? That is talking about self-hosting apps, which we will see on the next slide. Because if you want to host the app yourselves, there are some things that you definitely need to remember. You also need to provide a link to your application, which is not really that tricky, right? But apps are not scanned. Apps are not scanned, which means if you have malware inside your application, then we will not see this. So we actually give you a free service to check if your application is really secure if you use the other options. Another downside of self-hosting apps is they cannot be silently pushed. So you really need to instruct your end users, hey, go to the Managed Google Play Store, go to this category, download that application, right? It seems that it's not everybody able to do that. So again, there should be really a good reason why you want to self-host the apps. And some of the customers are actually concerned about that. Yeah, but if I use this application and upload it to Google, they might be concerned that we take the data. But again, we actually, if you use this mechanism, we don't actually take your data. But again, there are some pros and some downs on the way how you can actually manage this application, which you're now aware of and you can at least consider. And there are some key takeaways actually around the Managed Google Play. So again, Managed Google Play accounts are the preferred identity if you're going to do Android enterprise deployments for the reasons I just mentioned. You can control application deployment using whitelisting and setting the correct permissions for the end user or on behalf of the end user. And actually, you can deploy in-house applications and benefit from the Google Play infrastructure using the CDN network and the scanning options that we have available for you. And I think Jeroen has another demo ready where he might be showing something of this.
Yeah, thanks, Mirko. Due to the phase of time, we still have like 14 minutes left. We're gonna skip the in-house apps demo in the extensive part of the demo. I'm just gonna quickly show the console of the Google Play Store or the Google Play console. Where you have all the enterprise in-house apps uploaded by Citrix Endpoint Management through the GUI. And one of the things I mentioned before, what is interesting to know and to show is if you have an in-house application that you will share with subcontractors, or you get an application externally developed that is used for the same use case for different customers, and the developer keeps the code and distributes the apps, you will see that he has the option so this is like an in-house developed app, for example. So if I click that and I go to the should go to the configuration page of the app itself. Under the settings part of the application, you have the on the setup part of the app, you have the Manage Google Play Store. And I don't know why my internet is so slow at the moment. Yeah, this is really annoying. Sorry about that. But basically, yeah, you see, it's unresponsive. So normally we'll have on the setup, you will have Manage Play, and you will have an option to add your organization there. So please reach out if you have any questions on this, and we can explain that to you one-on-one. But you can add your enterprise ID, then the ISV is able to check that application with you in your Android enterprise environment. Let's switch back to the demo of the slides. We go to Chetan eventually on the MAM SDK. Chetan.
All right. No worries. Thank you, Mirko. Thank you, Jeroen, for for providing those updates. Unfortunately, the demos were not there, but that was pretty cool of how you were trying to show that even if you are an ISV, right, you can always set that up using their org ID, or the org ID that you created at the start, and publish apps only to that org ID. So even though it is a private app, it only go on Google Play, it still only goes to that organization. So we definitely have videos on that, and we can show you that later on. But let's keep the focus on MAM SDK. So what is known about MAM SDK, and I also saw some questions on the MAM SDK, so it's perfect time for me to cover that. But Jeroen, if you could go to the next slide, right? So what are we doing with the MAM SDK, right? So previously what would happen is your app developer would create that APK, give it to an admin. The admin would say, hey, hold on, you know what? I need to use these MDX toolkits, or the command line, especially for Android Enterprise. And now I'm going to wrap this application. Then I'm going to get this MDX file, and then I'm going to publish this MDX file, make some changes, and then finally I have that published to the end user. But this had a lot of challenges, right? Because the previous MDX approach was not that robust. It depended a lot on the OS changes. If Android 12, iOS 15, or whatever is coming out, there was a lot of challenges because of the way we were hooking that. So with the MAM SDK, it has now become a much more robust integration. It's more resilient to any changes that the OS would be making. Mirko, no offense to Google, but we need it to be that way, and it overall reduces the complexity, right? It just requires that one thing of the app developer to basically integrate the MAM SDK, which we have a lot of documentation on our developer docs, and we could provide the links to you when we share these slides, where you can go to these developer docs and start integrating the SDK. And one keynote that I wanted to share over here, that MDX is going to be deprecated. The time is coming soon. The time is September 2021. So please, if you have not started, please start on that. And when you look at Android, if you move to the next slide, Jerome, would give a better explanation of where we are with that. All right. Yeah. So the other part with Android, the cool part is that you only need to focus on the network access part, right? The MAM SDK for micro VPN. All the other parts, right? The encryption, that's covered by Android Enterprise. We just covered that, like the powers of the platform, the app restrictions, the app interaction, right? All this stuff is already covered by Android Enterprise because Android Enterprise is providing you that separate work profile, which separates personal from work. And also, if it's a completely managed device, then of course the admin is controlling what applications go on that device, right? So when you look at Android, it has become much more simpler for you to integrate the MAM SDK when you only have to focus on the micro VPN SDK and not the other aspects of it. And if you go on the next slide, what I would like to tell you is that if you compare that to the other side of the house, we have most of the development platforms supported. I know it's a little bit slower today, but yes, as you can see, we have already GA native Cordova Xamarin. It's all available for Android. So please do start it today. And if you have any questions, you know me, please go reach out to me with any questions and we'll be able to help you. All right. And if we go on to the next slide, which is the mobile workspace experience, right? So when we look at an end user, right, this is always the challenge that an admin has, is how do I provide my end user the best experience, but at the same time, how do I make sure that it is secure? Can I do that, right? And that's always the big question that comes up to mind. And what we are trying to do with our mobile workspace experience is exactly provide you that, as an admin, give you that security, and as an end user, give you that experience. So if you move to the next slide, Sharon. All right. So what happens here, right? So you all know a lot of our users use our workspace. Our workspace is that great solution that provides you your mobile apps, your web apps, your even in some cases your VDAs, whether it be a desktop, all in one place. It also has brilliant micro apps where you can do some quick work without even getting out of the context of the workspace. So it's amazing. But a lot of times we also need certain mobile apps or native apps to do our work. For example, let's take secure mail, right? So when you need that secure mail, you want to make sure as an admin that secure mail is protected from other personal apps and it is going out of the context of the workspace. So what do I do over there? So at that point of time, SEM comes into play, and as you can see on those screenshots, it will ask you or ask the end user to enroll the device, right? That is security. Now, the second part is experience. As you can see, there is no other apps. There is no flipping between apps. And as you go through the whole process, there's only a few buttons that the end user has to click. And what we do? We take that workspace, make it a work-enabled app without the end user having to reauth, without the end user having to even enter the store information again. All done in one workflow, which we call the experience. So what do you have at the end? You have the experience, right? Where you get all your work apps, including the workspace app in that work profile, and you get the security as well, right? So that's what it is with mobile workspace experience. Again, this is a preview of what is to come. You guys are getting this because you are on this webinar, but we will get you more announcements coming on this feature pretty soon. So let's go and jump on to Q&A. Jonathan, over to you.
Absolutely. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining today's webinar. And I really do appreciate all of the presenters here with some of the great content and demos that we had to offer. So I do have a long list of questions, so I want to go through these as quickly as possible. Starting with WPCOD, right? Say that 3 times real fast. Work profile on a company-owned device. This question goes out to Chetan. Chetan, when do we expect support for that?
I can say pretty soon. WPCOD has been something that we have been working with Google as well to understand, to standardize what should be the architecture, how should it be working. You please do expect an announcement coming out from us pretty soon. Unfortunately, I cannot give exact dates, but we'll be opening this up for tech preview soon. Please reach out to us or fill up that Podio form so that way I can enable these flags on your SEM instances. And again, this will be available on our cloud instance only. So
perfect. Thanks, Jeroen. So with respect to just looking through the questions here, will there be a possibility to define a browser via the MAM SDK for Citrix productivity apps?
So I can take that too because I answered the MAM SDK, right? So as I mentioned earlier, MAM SDK is focused on the micro VPN aspect, right? And what happens is that when one of the options, the way you can make sure that it only opens up in Microsoft Edge is to make sure that's the only browser application that is approved, right? So it automatically just defaults into opening into that.
Awesome, awesome. And this question's for everyone, all the presenters here. G Suite legacy integration. I mean, what about G Suite? Do I need to pay for G Suite in order to integrate with Android Enterprise? With respect, and just kind of summarizing several of the questions that we have here in the queue. So let's start with the first question. Is G Suite required for Android Enterprise?
Yeah, the simple answer is no, right, to that question. So G Suite is not required. As Mirko already mentioned, right, you can use the managed Google Play accounts for EMMs, which is basically a free Google account with which we demoed with the Gmail extension, if you want to call it that way, that makes it binding between the EMM. You need G Suite if you want to manage Chromebooks. So that's one of the things. In that scenario, you need to sync between Citrix Endpoint Management and G Suite. You can do that with the Google Cloud syncing directory sync tool to sync your Active Directory groups and users to G Suite, and then you need an additional Chrome management license to be enabled in G Suite to manage your Chromebooks. Any news on that, Chetan, or any to add?
Yeah. So, of course, we do have that Chrome management, but G Suite, I think so the confusion is because we call it the legacy G Suite configuration, and then the one that you showed the demo of, was the new way of doing it. Technically, we support both, right? So it's not like we don't support, the G Suite way of setting up Android Enterprise. We just call it legacy because that was the first one, and then we added the new one, right? So.
Yeah. So if our customer wants to use G Suite, they need to tap, and that's clear in the notification, the legacy tab to configure the binding.
If they have a G Suite or they have set up with G Suite, then that would be, that would be a good way to do it. But most of the times it's like the one that you showed is the one I would say 95-98% of the time used. So.
Got it. And I know that we are out of time, so I do want to sneak in one more quick question with respect to on-premise deployments. Are there going to be, is there support for Android Enterprise on-prem? I think we should answer that question just in general, right? And then second to that, will WP COD, right, work profile on a company-owned device, be supported on-prem as well?
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to say. So currently, Android Enterprise, most of the things that are shown over there on-prem are supported. As you can understand, the reason why we are pushing cloud is when we are cloud, we can get much more faster updates, to you. Also, there is a release lag, right? I mean, we basically release one major release, if at all, on our on-prem instance, right? So the time that it takes to even get you the features takes a lot of time, it's just that lag. But what we have done specifically for Android Enterprise, because we consider it as a new platform, we've added as much as features as possible to that, right? So the question is of WP COD, Again, it is, we expect it, or that is, the decision to be made on to add it to on-prem. But even if we do that, it cannot be done today. We have to find the right release cycle because it's a net new feature, and we cannot break existing, that causes regression, stuff like that. So it has to go through the right level of testing. So it's not like, it can be in, RP1 or RP2 release, right? So just want to make that clear. But yes, COPE is currently supported. Of course, Android 11 does not work on COPE, so I understand that challenge, but we are trying to address that with WPCOD and getting that sooner, starting with the cloud first.
All right, thanks, Saul. I think those are all the questions that we have time for. Oh, yeah, one more mention.
I want to address one question because I think so. This is really important of how we think about Android Enterprise. And Mirko and Jeroen, you guys can help me, right? There was a question on, do I need MAM only for Android Enterprise? And I want to address this because this is a very common question that I get all the time, is that your work profile or the BYO work profile is your platform MAM, right? Think about, like, you used to have 15, 20 applications or maybe less, where you used to containerize every application by itself and then have that container talk to each other application so they remain in that secure boundary. But look at what Android has done for us. Android has given this amazing thing called the work profile, which says, hey, I'm going to create a separate user profile for you, a user space for you, which I'm going to call it work profile, and give you access on that. That way, if I, as a user who's using, my device, for personal purposes, I know that is completely separated. Mirko, who might be my admin, has no access to my personal apps. He has no idea what applications are running on my device other than just the work applications. So if you're looking at MAM only, I would say work profile is the MAM only. We are not supporting any MAM only kind of a scenario because it's not even there. It should not be even there from a platform perspective, right? So just wanted to make sure that is clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree on that, Wishitan. And if you look at the market shifts that going on around these technologies, you see like platform MAM is the way to go forward. You see huge investments of Google there on the privacy side of things to make sure, and the messaging, right? That's why Mirko also is here, and that's why we have next week a separate session on security, is to make our customers, our current customers and our future customers aware of how important security in combination with bring your own device, which is the new platform MAM, how important that is for the industry and our customers. So well, on that note, I think we already
we are about 4 minutes over.
And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone. I think I'm going to hand it over to Amy Claire to close things out.
Yes, thank you everyone. I will now end the webinar, but as a question was raised earlier about sharing the recording and the slides, I will be doing that with all of the attendees. And please don't forget that we have part 2 to this webinar next week, same time. So please do join that for the continuation of this session. Many thanks all, and speak to you all next week.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Soon. Bye.